Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me at benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast because People of Distinction is a nationally and internationally syndicated show because of listeners like you. Our shows are available across all major podcast distributors as well as YouTube. And if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. We appreciate the support. Continue to like and follow and sit back and strap in because on the line with us today is an impressive individual. You may remember the name Barry I. Gold. Well, of course, if you remember it, that's because you know that Barry has been with us a couple of times before. Now, we're discussing his amazing upcoming book called Boomer Dad today. Now, it's a memoir, all right? And also, like I mentioned, not available for purchase just yet. But once it is, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, all the regular online book resellers. But the best place that you can go to gather everything that Barry has in store is his personal website, which is barryigold.com. There you'll find more information on him, more information on this book once it's available, but you're also going to find another book that we previously discussed called We're Overdosed. Now that one is just as impactful, I promise you. Completely different narrative. We may touch up on it here today, but definitely one that you're going to want to add to your shelf because it is remarkably informative and a great resource for you to add to that bookshelf. Now, before we go any further, I want to point out the fact that Barry was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by Quipper Prints. So if you're a writer out there who has gone through their process and now you need help moving that masterpiece you just developed, well, contact Quipper Prints, people. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and this is exactly what they specialize in. So you're going to have to head on over to quipperprints.com today and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is a true pleasure to have Barry back here on the line with us, man. I really do mean it. It is an absolute delight. His book, Boomer Dad, is remarkable for a number of reasons. First and foremost, like I mentioned, it's a memoir. I always am one that views memoirs as very resourceful, right? Because when you think about it, a memoir is just the written form of someone's experiences, and we know that through experiences, wisdom is derived. Well, if I can read this man's book and I can learn some things that would prevent me from making similar mistakes on my path, oh, listen, man, that's a great thing, right? I mean, that's a gift that keeps on giving because you're going to keep it on your shelf and you can keep revisiting and get those helpful hints throughout. But not only is it informative, but it's also just a fun ride. I mean, Barry is an individual that you're going to want to get to know. In his book, it surrounds not only his life, his marriages, his, like the title says, is being a father, and specifically a father from the boomer generation. So he's going to have certain reflections on how his parenting style has shifted and what he's been able to view over those years. But there is even a section on retirement that is really going to offer fantastic pieces of advice for all of you out there that are approaching that retirement part of your life. I'm telling you, this is something you're going to want to add to your shelf. Remember, not available for purchase just yet, but you're going to head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, barryigold.com frequently. You're going to get it because it's in the final stages of creation. So go ahead and pick it up the moment it's released. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Barry, first and foremost, welcome back to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest with us today, man. How you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you, Benji, and it's a pleasure to be back.
Likewise, man. Listen, we're looking forward to this, Barry. I feel every conversation we have is just as delightful and just as impactful, man. So we're thoroughly looking forward to this. Let's start off, I guess, at the ground floor with regards to Boomer Dad. Obviously, I get the title. You know, we once we know a little bit more about you, that we're able to draw the connection. But tell us more about the narrative, because I know it's very eclectic. Again, we're talking about your life. We're talking about your experiences, your marriages, but we even have a retirement section thrown in. Tell us a little bit more about this fantastic book, Boomer Dad.
Well, what makes me an expert on retirement is I achieved writing success in my retirement. And now I say sincerely to my readers, look, maybe you can't write. All right, don't force yourself. But maybe you have expertise in math. Maybe math was your best subject in high school. Go tutor the neighbor's kid.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, before you know it, you'll be tutoring all the kids in the neighborhood, and their parents will be happy. It's just a way to make your retirement mean something to you.
Since we started there, let's focus on that a little bit more, because I love, we understand, and, conversations that I have had, the daunting realization that comes with retirement is looking for that purpose, right? Looking for that sense of, what do I do now, right? I remember talking to my mother, but again, this is something that I think is reflected in a lot of people that I've spoken to. Conversations with her, it was almost she had reached that retirement age, but she didn't stop working. And it was, I remember having conversations like, Mom, why don't you retire? Why don't you? And it was almost like, well, what do I do now if I retire? And I think that is a very poignant realization that comes to a number of us. And I think this coincides with what you're talking about, right? Having that purpose, being able to pay it forward and utilize your time effectively. Well, go a little bit more into your how-to section that you've added in. And in addition to what you've already said, is there any additional advice that you can offer for retirees?
Well, if you're still scratching your head, let's say math wasn't your favorite subject, so you don't want to tutor your neighbor's kid. But what if you played an instrument in high school? Start practicing. Get a gig at the local coffee shop on one night a week. Don't be afraid to perform. You'll find it very gratifying. And that's what I tell everyone. Don't be afraid. Take your best skill and offer it to someone and say, hey, look, I can cook. I made you a pot of gumbo. And offer it to a homeless shelter. Believe me, you'll be welcome. It's a way of building meaning into retirement. I don't view retirement as the end. I view it as the beginning.
Well, listen, we offered a lot of advice for retirees. Thank you very much for that. Well, now let's get something closer to your title here, because, of course, applicably termed Boomer Dad, right? So we're combining your parenting with the generation. So let's offer some more advice. And as a member of the Boomer generation, Barry, what unique challenges and opportunities did you face in raising children? And how might these differ from today's parenting landscape?
It's an interesting take. My children have gone through my professional phases. My first child, the 50-year-old, grew up to be a physician. But she was born when I was a graduate student. And there's no one more broke than a graduate student.
It takes me back, Barry.
She grew up in my poverty. My second child, I was a postdoctoral fellow when he was born. Also broke, living from hand to mouth, supporting a family on $10,000 a year. My third child was born, I finished my career working as a international director of drug development for a German company. So I was flying back and forth to Europe twice a month, first class. I mean, it was cushy. And my ex-wife is an attorney. She was doing very well. So my third child was born in a big house with two cars in the driveway, both German, and he's. But as it turns out, the marriage didn't last. When we broke up, my ex-wife became ill, and I took custody of the boy. And believe me, being in one's 70s and providing all 3 meals and laundry for a child in one's 70s is a challenge. But I rose to the challenge, and today he's with me 4 days a week, and it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of retirement. Treat it as a beginning. Define what your beginning is going to be.
Right.
That's my advice.
Barry, thank you very much for that. And listen, it's, I guess, comforting, but also, I guess, worrisome in the same way of knowing that I'm not planning on having children by the time I'm 70. That's not going to happen. My kids are going to be out of the house, and I'm going to make sure they stay there. But it's one of those things where no matter your age, I think parenting, if there's one thing to take from this, parenting is exhausting. Parenting in and of itself is a full-time job, man. And it's something that we love to do it as fellow parents, but it is definitely an investment. So thank you very much for that. People, again, the book is called Boomer Dad. Remember, it's not available for purchase just yet, but the moment it is, you're going to want to head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and of course, barryigold.com. And you're going to want to purchase your copies because this is something that is going to be so entertaining, but also remarkably informative. As we transition here, I'm curious to know, from now a broader perspective, Barry, in what ways did your generational experience shape your views on life, but work, career, and even now, eventual retirement? Talk to us about how that has been shaped by the specific generation in which you were born and raised in.
I don't know that being a baby boomer lent any specific talent to me. It did give me a deep value of family and children, notwithstanding that my marriages didn't work. But still, family is me and my son. And I noticed that my appreciation of family value was enhanced by my generation. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
About how does the generation
Absolutely.
lend itself to my parenting. I think it taught me that parenting is an important pursuit.
Mm-hmm. I understand the value that you're placing on it and how important it is. I want to transition here now, Barry, because you have another book that we discussed earlier, or we discussed previously, called We're Overdosed. And I think that one is, again, as I mentioned, very, very informative, a great resource to add to the shelf. And I would be doing my listening audience a disservice if I didn't ask at least a question or two with regards to it. But as we close out of Boomer Dad, my final question to you, what are you hoping people take from it? I mean, is this a book that you wanted to share for pure entertainment? What is a message or a theme you hope your readers take when they've finished?
Oh, the lesson is don't be afraid of retirement, that you can make your retirement both interesting and valuable to society. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it. I do tell the joke. I say, listen, my brain says you're 45. My body says I didn't get that memo. So there are days that I can't. My son will say to me at 7:00 at night, Dad, I need laundry tomorrow. And I say, Richard, I don't want to fold clothes at 11 o'clock tonight. You're out of luck. But the point is, you don't have the energy you had, or I don't have the energy I had when I was younger. Mm-hmm. But I work around that limitation.
You find creative measures, right? I mean, listen, when you were younger and spry, you'd be able to just do everything off of pure energy and enthusiasm alone. As you get older, you start to get creative with some shortcuts that you take. I think that's a great piece of advice, Barry. Thank you very much. People, as I mentioned, the other book is called We're Overdosed. Now, Barry prior to his retirement, like he mentioned, he worked in the pharmaceutical industry. So he's going to have a direct insight to the industry and how it impacts our day-to-day lives much better than most. Of course, when we even hear the word pharmaceuticals, and we know what has happened in our society across the board and how it has ravished certain communities and just completely dismantled. Barry, why I think your book is so important is you're able to view things through a different lens. I think the common perspective from people outside is they look at the pharmaceutical industry as something that is, for lack of a better term, damn near evil, right? And something that is just very, very bad. Well, you have a direct insight and understand that there are a lot of positives. There are benefits to the industry. And of course, the medication offers a lot of benefits in and of itself. Well, I want to now take the conversation there and ask, in your experience, Barry, what pressing challenges does society face in balancing the benefits, because there definitely are benefits, with the risks of pharmaceutical medications?
Very good question and a loaded question. The first thing that people ask me about the pharmaceutical industry is, what do you think of this OxyContin thing? And that's been in the news so much for the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. There was a company that pushed OxyContin on television, and it led to a lot of people blame OxyContin for leading the charge in the addiction phenomenon that's occurring in the United States. And people ask me, is it an epidemic? And I say, yes, it is. 110,000 people died from opiate overdose last year in America. 70% of them had fentanyl as the agent that poisoned them. And I'm working on an article on fentanyl right now, asking the question, what did we do wrong? How did we get in this mess? So the industry, this is the industry that gave us COVID vaccine and gave us insulin. Some people would counter insulin by saying, and they charge so much for it.
Right.
But that's because we have private medicine. We don't have socialized medicine in this country. And we're the only Western country in the world without socialized medicine. So we have some work to do in that area. Mm-hmm. But what about the industry? Well, the industry has done a lot of good. But they've also given us OxyContin and given us fentanyl. So how do we balance the two? Well, we say, I say that industrial management for many years lost their morality. And they looked at Me Too management. If one company has OxyContin and they're selling $1 billion a year of OxyContin, well, we should have an opiate in our armamentarium. Well, they forgot that. They pushed that on television, TV advertising of drugs, and I'm against that entirely. We're only one of 2 countries in the world that advertises on television. The other one is New Zealand. But what about the industry? Well, the industry, I think, has been beaten up over the last decade or so. And morality has been re-injected in the industry. Could U.S. governmental agencies have done a better job? I believe they could have. And I propose in my book that every agency in the country that has anything to do with prescription medications, from FDA to DEA to National Institute on Drug Abuse, should all report to one officer, and that make it cabinet level. And that way we can manage drugs in this country the way I used to manage interdisciplinary teams in drug development. Very efficiently, and expertise is at the table with you.
Yeah.
It's a long-winded answer to your question, but I think that's what we could learn. We could learn that the industry has lost morality. They're trying to recapture it. Opiates are going through some reorganization in the government. For example, you can't cross the state line now with a prescription and fill it, doctor shopping. You can't fill a opiate prescription before it's due. So if you've gone up and used all the opiates in the jar, even though the prescription was for one a day, but you thought, oh, this is great, I love this stuff.
Yeah.
And finished the jar in 2 weeks, you can't refill it. So the states are beginning to come around. And lastly, I think prescriptions for opiates should be centralized, not state by state, not licensed by states, but licensed nationally and governed nationally.
You know, Barry, thank you very much for tackling such a monumental question, all right? Because I knew in asking it that it's very nuanced. It's layered. There is a much larger conversation to be had surrounding this topic. But I wanted to take the opportunity, since I had you here on the line. Again, your book is incredible. It is remarkably informative, as I've mentioned, and someone with your background, in your direct experience, can truly offer insight from both angles. Where I think a lot of times what you see on mainstream, either news, television, social media accounts, whatever it is, usually, like you've mentioned, like the industry is gotten pretty beat up over the past decade plus. And, you know, again, people play both sides of that coin here. A lot of that anger and mistrust that the public has with regards to the industry, you know, listen, whether it's localized to one particular drug or not, it is definitely warranted to a certain degree. But trying to throw a blanket statement over the entire pharmaceutical industry and label it as bad is also not doing anybody any good, because we understand that these medications that have been created, they help a lot of us live from our day-to-day lives, right? So there is the benefit to it, but responsible measures need to be taken. And I love the fact that you also tied in certain things that not only you believe should be happening, but certain things that are already happening, because measures are being taken and responsible action is being implemented. And that is the main thing to take care of people. Listen, the conversation goes much deeper than that. The book is called We're Overdosed. Well, we're out of time right now. So what I need you to do, since that's the one that's available at this moment, head on over to Amazon, BarryIGold.com, Barnes & Noble, all the other regular online book resellers. Start with We're Overdosed. This is going to be a book that is not only going to open your eyes to a lot, but it's going to start conversations amongst you and those around you. Through those conversations, we all become better informed. This book is the precipice to doing just that. While you're at it, check back in frequently, because Boomer Dad is also on the horizon. Just as informative, but also, you know, a little more entertaining as well, right? It's not so heavy-handed, but both of these books, I promise, are going to be just as amazing for you to pick up. Head on over there and do just that. Barry, this has been a true pleasure, man. As I'm not surprised that it was. Again, every discussion we have seems to be more and more enlightening and more entertaining. So thank you for sharing all of this fantastic information. And thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
I thank you, and I wish your listeners success in their ventures.